Bet the Board.
What do you mean you don't bet? I mean, I don't bet. You know, I don't gamble. I don't. I never have, and I never will. Yeah, right. I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
It's the Bet the Board podcast.
God likes me. He really, really likes me.
In the end, I wound up right back where I started. I could still pick winners, and I could still make money for all kinds of people back home. And why mess up a good thing?
Here's Payne Insider and Todd Furman.
Welcome into the Bet the Board podcast, NFL Week 11. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a fine slate of games, at least the way things look on paper. The fifth week in NFL history, the third in the Super Bowl era that'll feature 3 games in Week 11 or later between teams with a 700 or better win percentage. And we'll have a marquee matchup to kick things off on Thursday as well. I'm your host, Todd Furman, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and co-host, the one, the only Payne Insider. And Payne, we've had a lot of slates that we've dreaded breaking down on this very fine program, but some marquee matchups that should be a hell of a lot of fun to watch and hopefully to bet on as well.
A lot of exciting games this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. This might be the best card of the season so far. It starts tonight, right?
I would echo those same sentiments. Other than the Monday night game, the games in primetime should be a lot of fun and some exciting football to be played in each and every window, the way things set up right now. And credit to Roger Goodell's NFL, 88 games decided by 8 or fewer points so far this season. It's the most through week 10 of a season in NFL history. So parity and or putrid performance is alive and well in the NFL with some of the teams at the bottom rungs of the ladder. But
a lot of putrid.
Yeah, we'll go putrid. I mean, what do we have? About 13 2-win teams?
Oof. There's some bad football. It's carrying over from college.
Well, you anticipated that might be the case, and lo and behold, the prophecy has unfortunately come true. But we should see some good football Thursday night, where Philadelphia, as we started to record, has taken money in the market. This price got as low as the Eagles -3. We're now out to -4 at most prominent shops. Total on the game, 48.5, upwards of 49, as they'll welcome in a familiar foe in the Washington Commanders. The Eagles, they've won 5 straight games since the bye back in week 5. Best scoring defense and total defense in the NFL during the win streak. More on that a little bit later. First win last week in Dallas since 2017. The Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl that season. 27 unanswered points against the Cooper Rush-led Cowboys. Meanwhile, for the Commanders, best 10-game start to a season for the franchise, going all the way back to the mid-90s. And if you're fond of trends, an interesting little nugget here, apropos of nothing, but like to share them anyways. Rookie quarterbacks applying to Jaden Daniels in this spot, 13-3-1 against the number in primetime games versus non-rookie quarterbacks going back to 2022. And we have seen some of those rookie quarterbacks cover this year, most notably Caleb Williams way back in week 2 against the Houston Texans. Paying the Commanders, they went out the trade deadline, traded for Marshawn Lattimore. He's not going to go, and you would love to have his services in the defensive backfield against an Eagles team that has been much more dynamic when A.J. Brown is on the field, and rightfully so. Jalen Hurts has continued to show progress leading Kellen Moore's offense, although we can make the case that he's holding onto the football a little bit too long. But the Eagles want to run the ball with Saquon Barkley, and it has paid tremendous dividends matched up against a Commanders defense that's been a little bit of porous against the run. Is that the matchup you're most focused on? Or are you curious to see how a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels does on a short week against a Vic Fangio defense that, while the numbers appear better, the resume that they've accumulated those stats against since the bye leave a little bit of noise, at least for me?
Yeah, those are the 2 key ones. You hit both of them, and I think the second one's interesting because we'll find out how improved the Eagles defense truly is. The impact our guy Vic Fangio has, we anticipate him being a good defensive mind. His defense is continuing to grow. I don't know what transpired in Miami. It was a little head scratching to me. Just didn't get along with that group of guys for whatever reason, you know. And Philly, it seems to be the opposite, right? It's the growth of the young guys that are actually helping this unit progress. If you look since week 5, the Eagles, number 1 in both EPA and success rate allowed, schedule adjusted on the season, the Eagles defense has shot all the way up to number 7. And a lot of it's these young guys. Cooper DeJean has been moved into that full-time starting slot role. The last 5 games, he's allowed 4.1 yards per target over that stretch. You got the rookie corner Quinyon Mitchell allowing 4.6 yards per target over that same 5 games. Jalen Carter has regained his form. He's talked about Vic helping him with hand placement and hand movement and using his hands more, and that's been kind of what's triggered him. The slight skepticism is the one that you have, and it's during this defensive resurgence, the Eagles have faced a schedule of offenses that averages out to be about 21st in efficiency. The Bengals were the only unit, within this sector with a pulse. Now you get number 2 Washington, so it's a big step up in class on a short week. Cliff Kingsbury has been shockingly good. Jaden Daniels has played out of his mind as a whole. And you're seeing the things that Cliff has done, right? He's made drastic changes to some of his concepts since going to that offensive coordinator rehab. And, he's using different personnel packages more than ever. He's using no huddle, not to create necessarily the most frenetic pace, but to kind of quickly get to the line of scrimmage, not allow the defense to substitute, slow things down for Jaden and see the personnel on the defense and then call the play to attack the personnel. Cliff has been more opponent driven than just running his own offense, which to me has shown a lot of growth. And really, if I had a pie, I don't know if it would be 50-50 Jaden to Cliff. I know the fans think it's probably 99-1, but it's certainly closer to the 50-50 on who's more responsible for this. Brian Robinson is back for the Commanders offense tonight. I think that's huge because when he's in the game, defenses have to use more of their base defense, and then Cliff can spread you out from that look. I think there's massive variance on this side of the ball. And this tonight is really going to dictate our belief in if the Commanders offense can stay on course and not dip through the back half, and if the Eagles defense is real. And then obviously it has massive implications on the division. This is also a little bit of a step up in class for the Commanders offense. I mean, they played the 5th easiest schedule of defenses this season. So everyone's commenting on who the Eagles have played during the resurgence. It's not like the Commanders have played a bunch of great defenses. They've played 2 top 10 defenses, the Bears and Steelers. And what did they do in those games? Right?
Didn't do much against the Steelers. Against the Bears. They didn't do much.
Did nothing. And it was very much, the Hail Mary at the end. Now, the rebuttal will be Jaden Daniels wasn't 100% healthy, and I agree. Jaden Daniels has a negative completion rate over expectation in those 2 games. He's only completed over 50%, just over 50% of his passes. The success rate is below league average against those 2 defenses. Last week against the Steelers, Jaden Daniels was dead last among 29 quarterbacks in EPA plus completion percentage over expectation. The other interesting matchup in this game is on the other side of the ball. The Eagles allow the most pressure in the NFL. It's almost all because Jalen Hurts holding on to the ball, taking about 3.2 seconds on average to throw the ball. It's great the Eagles get Jordan Mailata returning tonight, but there has to be an effort to get the ball out of Hurts' hands quicker when it's a straight drop back game. The Commanders are getting pressure at a top 5 rate. Dan Quinn has just done a fantastic job manufacturing pressure, and Jalen Hurts has massive delta in his performance. Number 2 in EPA per dropback when he's kept clean, 18 when pressured. So you look the last few weeks, Hurts has not really faced a ton of high pressure outfits. That'll change a little bit tonight. The other thing to look for is when Hurts does hold the ball a touch longer tonight, is it because of design, play action? Since the bye, the big change for this Eagles offense and why it's kind of shot up a little bit was health, right? Wide receiver health. But the offense has increased their rate of play action, and the Eagles have been hyper efficient using it. You have Dallas Goedert back. Philly is top 3 in play action efficiency, running alongside the Ravens and Lions in that department. The Commanders defense had struggled earlier in the season defending play action. They've improved. But again, you go back to schedule. Is it a byproduct? 3 of the last 4 games facing Carolina and the Giants offense and the Bears. So that's one thing to look at tonight as well for the Eagles offense is getting that play action efficiency rolling.
Such an interesting matchup, given where these two teams are at. One we expected to be here in the form of the Philadelphia Eagles, and why we had a preseason position on them at a price of plus 115 or better to win the division. And the Commanders, no doubt, have exceeded everyone's expectations to date against the Eagles, and a somewhat easier schedule going forward if they're able to pull off the upset here compared to what Philadelphia has in front of them, not just tonight, but a Sunday Night Football game against the Rams and the Ravens over the next couple weeks as well. So a massive game and a fun watch to kick things off for NFL Week 11. As we get towards the Sunday slate, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, two familiar foes, will renew acquaintances Sunday at a Crisler Field. Series history-wise, I mean, you look at these numbers and they make you laugh how competitive and how tightly fought they've been. 27 games decided by one score between the Ravens and Steelers going all the way back to 2008. It's the most of any NFL matchup, including playoffs. Second most meetings between head coaches in NFL history, with Mike Tomlin on one sideline, John Harbaugh on the other, behind only Curly Lambeau and Papa Hallis with the Chicago Bears. The Steelers, a little bit of a scheduling nuance here, will play their first division game this season in their 10th game of the year. So will the Bears, mind you, against the Green Bay Packers. It's the latest since 1970 that a team has played its first division game. The previous record was the 9th game of the season by the 2019 Atlanta Falcons. Meanwhile, the Steelers, winners of 4 straight games overall, have not won 5 straight in a single season since they started the 2020 campaign 11-0. Interesting on a variety of fronts, Payne. This Baltimore Ravens team, we've grown accustomed to them being a defensive juggernaut over the years, the Ray Lewises, the Ed Reeds, but this defense leaves an awful lot to be desired. Fortunately for them, they have an offense that is humming on all cylinders, averaging 7.1 yards per play this season. It's the highest in the Super Bowl era. They've scored 30 plus in 6 of their last 7 games, averaging an NFL high, nearly 32 points per contest. Lamar Jackson, for a perfect encore. I mean, this MVP is already going to be sewn and locked up for him by week 11, barring injury. Derrick Henry has paid dividends. And in steps the Steelers defense that we had a lot of questions about going into their performance last week against the Commanders. I'm not sure they necessarily answered them. If they answer them and pass this test with flying colors, we can buy into the Steel Curtain defense. But is that the matchup you want to watch, or to see how Russell Wilson fares on the other side against the Ravens defense that's been very good against the run, but absolutely horrific when it comes to defending the pass?
A couple things stand out to me here is that we've pegged the Steelers defense as a regression candidate based on schedule. Pittsburgh's faced the 60th schedule of offenses this season, and now you get a historically good offense that's off a mini bye. And we know Todd Monken usually does a fantastic job scheming to opponent weakness. The Steelers are going to be without Alex Highsmith. He's turned himself into a good pressure guy who sets the edge well opposite TJ Watt. The Highsmith splits have been really shocking. The Steelers have had a 10% dip in pressure rate when he's off the field on third down specifically. The EPA splits are dramatic because the Steelers are allowing a yard more per pass attempt without Highsmith. And so you'll probably hear a lot about this over the course of the week, and I do believe it's real. However, the drop-off from Highsmith to the next guys was larger because you had Nick Herbig, who's been out. So it's been a multi-level dip. Herbig is back this week. How many snaps will he play? TBD, based on what Tomlin said. Steelers also traded for defensive end Preston Smith. So there's at least more answers in Herbig and Smith that Pittsburgh hadn't had when Highsmith was off the field. But honestly, I think, the caliber of defense really has not mattered much this season. That's how good Baltimore's offense has been. They're scoring and moving the ball in every type of defense. But without Highsmith, Lamar's blindside protection gets a touch easier. Rodengarten's job is tougher, but you can at least plan for TJ Watt by helping the rookie with, Ricard or keeping Andrews in. And so when you can double that side now and feel just a little bit better about Lamar's blind side. I think the other factor here, and we've discussed it in the recap shows and our Steelers breakdown last week, and it's now starting to make its rounds throughout the internet.
As it often does.
How sustainable is the Steelers' offensive resurgence? Like Russell Wilson in the Golden State Warriors offense is basically back, right? It's a layup or it's a 3-pointer. And right now, Russ is in like the Steph Curry zone where he's just banging home deep shots. And so he's number 2 in air yards since returning to the lineup in week 7 per attempt. 18% of his throws are deep. Out of 35 qualifying quarterbacks over this time frame, Wilson is 7th in EPA per dropback. And it's mostly due to the deep balls. He's 25th in success rate, however. Russ is 30th in completion rate. It's a boom play type offense, but the down-to-down efficiency just has not been there. And so Russ has basically been spamming the moon balls to Pickens, who's an elite contested catch guy, and now you add Mike Williams in the mix, who had the Willie Mays over the shoulder catch last week for a touchdown, which was nice. But and you can hit some explosives on the Ravens. I just, when I correlate that style from Pittsburgh's offense to what we're going to see from Baltimore's defense, I think it's vital that Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson come out with the right game plan here. And so it's a little bit different from what they've been doing. You got to come out and throw on early downs. You got to come out and take those shots on early downs. I think we mentioned this about a month ago regarding the Ravens defense, and it still holds true as I looked into it this week. On early downs, the Ravens are the number 1 run defense in the NFL. They only allow 28% of runs to grade successful, minus 0.2 EPA per rush allowed. If you look at the Ravens pressure numbers, they're not good in totality, but they're elite getting pressure on third downs. So Pittsburgh has to take the downfield shots early. You don't want to be in a situation where you're like force feeding Najee and Warren getting zip and pip on early downs against the Ravens defense and then throw on third down when they're elite getting pressure. So it has to be the right formula here, and you'll know right away.
We know what the Steelers do, Payne. They run the football on first down. They get themselves in a 2nd and 10, and the whole world knows that they're going to run play action on the next play. That's pretty much how their offense has worked under Arthur Smith.
Now, the Ravens defense has not been good, right? Let's keep our eyes on the Kyle Hamilton situation. Worked off to the side both Tuesday and Wednesday. Harbaugh gave his guys off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, but had the team back for a light Tuesday practice. Clearly, there was a void downfield against the Bengals in the second half without Kyle Hamilton on the field. He is their queen on the chessboard. So that is something to certainly monitor here, and would be a large impact on some of those downfield shots that Russ likes to take.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a Ravens secondary who I think Jamar Chase is still running en route to a massive fantasy performance in some of the explosives, but not to cast aspersions in the direction of George Pickens and Russell Wilson. It's not exactly Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase when you're trying to make comparisons. So we'll see what the Steelers can do offensively. And with Najee Harris dealing with that ankle injury, if we get a more steady dose of Jalen Warren, who can be a dynamic pass catcher out of the backfield and give them a slightly different wrinkle. Sunday afternoon, NFC West, Seattle and San Francisco. It's the 49ers, a 6.5-point favorite, painted across the board. There has been an ongoing battle on this total, opened as low as 47.5, got as high as 50.5, and we're now looking at kind of 48, we'll call the consensus number on this particular game. It's been one-sided within the division. The 49ers have now beaten the Seahawks in 6 straight meetings. It ties for the longest streak in series history. The Seahawks, they come into this game fresh off a bye, but boasting a 4-5 record, 11th in the NFC and last in the NFC West. McDonald, in the proverbial coach speak that you mentioned yesterday on the college football show, a perfect timing for the bye. Coming in Monday, and it stings from the past game, but then saying, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we're going to do over the course of the week. Players kind of getting away by refreshing their minds and their bodies, McDonald said. I thought it was good for them. Their spirit today was great, just like I said, had a really energetic practice. So put a great game plan together tomorrow, and onward we go for the second half of the season. Well, that game plan defensively going to look a little different for the Seahawks, who cut ties with their leading tackler coming into this week. But it's a 49ers team that's 5-4 this season, 8th in the NFC and 2nd in the NFC West. But they do have an NFL best 24-4 record in weeks 10 through 18, going back to 2021. And we're a little bit unfortunate, at least in the scoreboard watching department, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, given some of their special teams miscues. And when you look at their EPA on special teams, you can understand why. Payne, Seattle should be getting healthier. DK Metcalf, we expect to be out there. Abe Lucas activated off the physical physically unable to perform list. Unfortunately for the Seahawks, though, George Fant injured his knee against the Rams. He landed on IR to make some of that roster space. And defensively for the Seahawks group, maybe it's a rest and a reset button for a group that is underwhelmed coming into the year, considering that this was a team we had a little bit of exposure to going over their win total against a 49ers side that offensively has plenty of weapons. They're all getting healthy and trending up, and defensively has been surprisingly good against the pass, but could be down its top pass rusher if you believe some of the comments coming out of the Bay Area regarding Nick Bosa and that hip injury that provided a hindrance and why he couldn't bring Baker Mayfield to the turf in the waning moments of the 49ers Bucs game on Sunday.
So this is a tough game for me, and there are some moving parts here. So Mike McDonald obviously has not been happy with the way his defense has performed, right? It's not up to his standard. He continues to overhaul the unit, and he set the tone ahead of what is really a massive division game, letting Tyrell Dotson walk. Personally not a fan of that move, but he knows better than me, obviously. And despite, to me, when I look at this, like, the scheme was completely different. And so there's going to be this transition period. And then you got schwacked in the face with all of these injuries Seattle had to endure. And somehow they're 15th in schedule adjusted efficiency, right? They're above average despite everything that's gone on. And they're getting healthier along the front. And I think that's the key to this game. You have to pressure Purdy. Between the 49ers O-line and Purdy holding on to the ball for like over 3.1 seconds, Purdy's been pressured on over 38% of his dropbacks. It's the seventh most among qualifying quarterbacks. So Seattle's got to get some pressure in this, take him off of his spots, force a mistake or two. Seattle has struggled against running backs this season, both on the ground and through the air. We saw CMC's impact immediately as a pass catcher. I was a little surprised that Shanahan worked CMC so much in his first game back. It was an 89% snap rate.
Well, 19 touches there in his first game in return from injury.
The discussion, and for whatever reason, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's Shanahan, but the messaging and the information out of San Francisco this season has been the least clean it's been in a long time. The discussion was that, like, Mason and Garendo would handle about 70% of the runs, and CMC would be about 30%, and then a full-time third down back initially to ease him in. That went out the window. And I think in the moment, CMC handling the bulk of the carries maybe helps Seattle's defense. I thought CMC looked a little funky running it. Looked better as a pass catcher, looked better getting down the field on a linebacker, and a great anticipatory throw by Purdy. I'm not really basing it on production, right? The 13 carries for 39 yards is what it is, right? Sometimes you just have poor games. Sometimes the matchup isn't as good. It just looked different visually, him taking a handoff and trying to get going and making, clean hard cuts. Slow acceleration
was how I'd best describe it. That wasn't as evident when he was catching passes, when he could get a full head of steam going.
Yes, that's perfect. There just wasn't that initial burst at handoff. Maybe there is this week. Maybe it was a confidence thing. I just didn't see it. So I'm not sure that if you're going to go with CMC with an 89% snap share again, and Mason and Garendo aren't going to touch the ball effectively, then I don't know if the Seattle run defensive woes are going to be exposed as much as they potentially could be. You would hope McDonald has a little bit better of a game plan this go around after seeing Shanahan's offense. We talk about the drop off on short week games for first time head coaches. That was advantage Shanahan in a Thursday night matchup week 6. I think this is a little bit more of an even playing field where McDonald's had 2 weeks to prepare. Shanahan just one, and this is a different style of defense than he's seen for the last, how many ever years he's been in Seattle with Pete and those guys. Offensively, I think the Seahawks get the right side of their line settled for the first time all season. Abraham Lucas was activated and returned to practice on Wednesday. All signs, I believe, and this would be massive if it's not the case. Listening to Kyle Shanahan, I think Bosa plays. But he is battling a hip injury. But if he does go, I don't think he's 100%. And then you've upgraded the right tackle situation. So that's 2 positives for Seattle. DK Metcalf is on track to play. I know it was a limited on Wednesday, but he talked to the media on Wednesday as well. He's only done that on weeks he's played. So that's a pretty good tip that DK is going to be out there. Charvarius Ward remains out at corner for the 49ers. If you just look at the box score, the 49ers did a good job bottling up and frustrating DK Metcalf in that first meeting. He was targeted 11 times. He had just 3 catches. It was good for 4.4 yards per target. It appears dreadful on the surface. You watch the game, and it wasn't truly that, right? Metcalf had the 70-yard touchdown that was called back for the illegal shift. He caught a touchdown, and he was out of bounds on by like a hair, and then he had the big drop. It could have been a massive DK game. So when I look at this, there's a couple clear areas where Seattle has to be effective. I wouldn't call them clear advantages or edges, but when you look at this and you look at how the season's shaping up, this just feels like a Seahawks all-in effort type game here, Todd. And I think you had a good comparison with an AFC East matchup that we saw recently, applying it to this NFC West matchup.
Yeah, when you look at some of the dynamics, and again, every situation created a little bit differently, but Seattle, as you've outlined, extra time to prepare. So the first data point against the 49ers, I don't think you can take that much away from. And for a team now sitting on the cusp of 4-5 with 2 divisional games this week against the 49ers and then Arizona at home next week before, road trips to take on the Jets and Cardinals, reminds me of the Miami Dolphins when they were catching 6.5 against the Buffalo Bills. Nobody wanted any part of the Dolphins in the betting market. And while the Dolphins didn't get the outright win, they put together their most complete performance once they got their starting quarterback healthy. It was a drop pass here or there, and the game could have ended very differently. So I think for Seattle, whatever that top tier effort is from this team, it will be on full display on Sunday. And in my opinion, especially around the key number, it explains why we haven't gotten to 7 just yet. And the number is more or less painted 6.5 throughout the marketplace.
The total is interesting from this perspective. So listen, there might be a difference of opinion. This was very much a dummy up on Sunday, Monday. And then Tuesday, we saw the real position come in under here. And you're looking right now, as we discussed this Thursday morning, the two sharpest shops, Chris and Pinnacle are lowest in the market here. You go back to that first game, and with it being Mike McDonald's first time and his defense not as healthy as it is here, that game took everything to go over, right? We had kickoff returns. We had 4th and goal touchdowns late from the 11-yard line to a midget to score a touchdown. That game did not belong going over. And so I think, that sentiment here is if Kyle Shanahan's going to be a little stubborn and run CMC, not doing it efficiently, and Seattle's defense is going to play a little bit differently in this spot, you could see why, when you got the 51.5, it was a little high. At 47 here that Pinnacle's using, I don't really want it. And I'm intrigued to see if they get in line with the market or really truly respect that group that pummeled the under here.
That decided to stick to the number that's sitting right on a key right now with slight juice attached to the over. It should be a hell of a game to watch Sunday afternoon to see if the Seahawks can keep their season afloat and if the 49ers will start to regain some of that form and swagger we've grown accustomed to when you look at how they performed over the back half of the schedule. You can follow Payne on social media at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Furman. You can follow me there for all things podcast related for the NFL and college football. Follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. Still not too late to sign up for the Bet the Board podcast and newsletter, either delivered right to your inbox on Friday with some additional information that you may have missed throughout the course of the week, and another investment to try and help round out that portfolio of sorts. Kansas City, Payne, and Buffalo one of the, if not the crown jewel on the schedule this weekend. The Chiefs 9-0, Bills 8-2. Best combined record at 17-2 entering a game in week 11 or later since the Chiefs took on the Rams back in 2018. And we know how that game went. Fantasy managers everywhere, regardless of what player they owned, were thrilled with that particular outcome. Sunday will mark the 8th career meeting between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Mahomes owns a slight 4-3 edge, including a 3-0 record that matters most in the postseason. They are the second quarterback pair from different divisions since 1970 to meet 8 times in a 5-season span, matching that of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning from 2003 to 2007. So already rarefied air for these quarterbacks. The series, when you look at the 7 games, separated by a grand total of 7 points, with Kansas City showing a slight 190 to 183 scoring edge. And since 1998, when we talk about AFC supremacy, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, or Josh Allen has been in a conference championship game 19 times, including 13 straight. So all roads, as we know, run through Arrowhead in terms of winning the AFC. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, franchise record, 15 straight victories, including the playoffs, the 10th longest streak in NFL history. The Bills, on the flip side, off to their best 10-game start at 8-2 since 1993, the 4th of 4 straight Super Bowl trips. Buffalo comes into this contest on a 5-game winning streak. And when we try and identify some of the strengths and weaknesses of these teams, credit to the Kansas City Chiefs, Payne. They continue to reinvent themselves. They've gone from that explosive, high-flying offense years ago where defense was optional to being much more of a ball control, methodical approach, averaging the most time of possession per drive by any team on record for NFL data that goes back to the early 1990s. They average the most time of possession. Andy Reid's 26 seasons as a head coach, holding the ball for more than 33 minutes a game. And they're able to do that by averaging the most plays per drive by any team on record and by being extremely efficient on those high variance downs on 3rd and 4th. Patrick Mahomes is a dog. Yeah, we can rattle off all of those numbers until we're blue in the face. But Kansas City offensively against the Bills defense. Do we think Buffalo can generate enough pressure to keep Mahomes from being ultra efficient and playing keep away like the Chiefs have done so effectively all season and winning games, even if they aren't covering at the same clip we've grown accustomed to years ago?
So there's a couple of things I'm looking at here, but I do think the first is the market, right? That's important. And I think market perspective on field, it's actually the Bills' pass catching situation that likely determines the closing number and potentially the outcome here. I think you have to look at the Amari Cooper, Dalton Kincaid situation. And if both are out, I do think we see a dip to 1 here. We're about 2.5 as we record this Thursday morning. And it's interesting.
Keon, by the way, is already officially out.
Yeah, he's already out. Yeah. So, yeah. When it comes to attacking the Chiefs defense, you want to use your tight ends, right? 32% of the receptions allowed by Kansas City this season has come at the hands of tight ends. If Kincaid is out, and it sounds more likely than not, with what's being reported as a PCL injury and the bye week ahead after this one, it makes sense if Kincaid is sat. Amari Cooper is dealing with the wrist injury. He's had a small cast around the wrist and hand at practice. He's been staying in shape running. He wants to be out there. He plays through everything. So, this is an impactful injury. It just comes down to his comfortability being able to actually catch a football with that mechanism on his hand. But if Cooper and Kincaid are out, Buffalo might not be able to attack the vulnerable parts of the Chiefs defense as much. So tight end attacking the linebackers is one. And then we talked this offseason about the loss of Snead going to Tennessee. Trent McDuffie has been propelled into, corner number 1 that's moved around, followed receivers. He's allowing 6.1 yards per target. That's less than last season, but the coverage hasn't been as sticky if you look at some of those metrics. Joshua Williams was the guy last year who had the surge, right? He was the guy that was supposed to take over the reins for Snead. He played 420 snaps last season, 3.6 yards per target allowed. The final 200 snaps, he only allowed 3 catches on 15 targets for 30 yards. He didn't end up winning the starting job this year. It was Jalen Watson. And Watson has actually been the Chiefs' best corner. Only 53% of targets have been caught, 4 havoc plays, no touchdowns allowed, 192 yards allowed on 28 targets. Watson was not allowing guys to get open. He was top 5 in stickiness. He's out for the season with a foot injury, and it's gone mostly unnoticed because Kansas City keeps winning, to your point, Todd. They just keep finding a way.
Last week, credit to the Chiefs. I did not have a special teams block field goal of 35 yards on how you keep your team undefeated for what has been an outstanding season for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I didn't have the blocked field goal to win the game on the old bingo card. But without Watson, the Chiefs have allowed 54% of passes to great success for the last 3 games. That's 27th in the NFL. It comes against the Raiders, the Bucks without Godwin and Evans, and Bo Nix last week. I know Buffalo wants to establish the run. Maybe they get it going, right? But the Chiefs have been elite stopping the run, especially on early downs. Number 3 in early down rushing success rate allowed on the season, trending to number 1 the last month. Only 20% of early down runs the last 3 games have been successful against this Chiefs defense. You have to throw on this version of the Chiefs defense with how it's currently constructed. So the other injury, right? I have to keep our eyes on tackle Spencer Brown for the Bills, dealing with an ankle injury. So like if Buffalo is going to finally get Kansas City and you know, it's a pretty meaningful game. I wouldn't say the most, but I think it has to be through the air. They're just limited if Spencer Brown's out and Kincaid's out and Cooper's out and we know Keon's out. It's just, I don't know if they can attack where you need to be able to attack right now. Defensively, though, to your point at the top, and I don't want to ignore that. It's simple, right? You have to pressure Mahomes. You have to dominate the Chiefs' left tackle situation, and the Bills have been getting pressure, right? They also have to continue holding teams, specifically the Chiefs this week, to 3 instead of 7 in the red zone. You mentioned the Bills, the Chiefs' methodicalness on offense, how great they've been on third down. The Bills right now, top 5 in success rate and EPA per play basis in the red zone. However, Buffalo's allowing the 5th highest rate of drives to reach their red zone. And so if that continues, I mean, Josh Allen could be on the sideline a decent amount, especially if they're going to try to run the ball on first down and second down into this Chiefs defense. But Buffalo's allowing the 8th lowest rate of touchdown conversions. So it's possible, like Mahomes and the Chiefs offense move the ball, right, and continue that dominance on third down. But the key here is Buffalo has to continue holding them to 3 because that's where their defense has really excelled this season. It has not been between the 20s. It's been inside the 20s. So it's kind of the formula here for Buffalo's. I know the receiver core is banged up, but I am almost, if Spencer Brown's healthy, kind of almost maybe pass to set up the run for Buffalo's offense. It's just intriguing, right? There's a lot of varying opinions on this game. This has been the full-blown battle, right? If you're just trying to find a spot to slay the dragon, you get a decent team here in Buffalo, and then the other faction is like, I'm just, it sounds square. It sounds too simple to be true. But you just, you take Mahomes as a dog. I believe it's 13-1-1 now is the count. And then there's also been a battle on this total. If you expect Buffalo to come out and run the ball on first and second down, it's not going to go well. And then all of a sudden you're trying to throw in Kansas City on third down with a lackluster group of weapons. That's because of injury. And then you believe Buffalo is going to continue to hold opponents to 3 when they get in the red zone, and Kansas City is going to be methodical in offense, and you can see neither offense has a ton of explosiveness. You're going to trend towards the under in this game. So there's been 2 differing mindsets on this total as well.
I mean, you mentioned Mahomes is a dog. Most passing yards, 282 yards per game. Best passer rating, 108.3 by any quarterback as an underdog since 1970. And that's among 323 qualifying quarterbacks that have 10-plus starts when they've been listed as a dog. So anyone who wants to say that Mahomes can't get it done or that somehow he has lost a step, he continues to elevate his play when odds makers count him down and out. And we saw that on full display earlier this year when we gave out the 49ers as a best bet against these very same Kansas City Chiefs, and Mahomes was able to extend drives late. Final thing on this game, and it's more of the macro level than anything else, and it's not specific to power numbers. These 2 teams, if you look at trying to bucket teams, do you put both of them in the same tier, or is Kansas City, despite being an underdog in this game, still a slight cut above where Buffalo is from a ceiling standpoint?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me that, and I got my power ratings up right here. So
You know me
For
too
us,
well after 750 plus episodes of doing this.
For us, Baltimore right now are clear number one. And then I would say yes. I would say yes, right? I mean, there's a clear 6 to me, right? It's Buffalo. I'm sorry, it's Baltimore. It's Kansas City. It's the Lions. We believe it's the 49ers with their health improving, and, you know, Jennings and Pearsall appear ready to surge to where that Ayuk injury is probably not as meaningful as some have potentially thought. And then you got Buffalo, and then you got Philadelphia. So like that's the clear 6. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Now you can maybe flip flop the order here and there, but it's basically Baltimore perched on their ledge there, and then Kansas City, Detroit, and San Francisco kind of in that same tier, and then maybe half a tick down is that Buffalo Philadelphia combination.
That's fair. No, I'm always curious. I mean, we're splitting hairs when we talk about the top teams. And of course, Buffalo is currently constructed, won't be in their best form come Sunday afternoon with all of those injuries they have to some of the skill position players. And while one of those absences might not be vital, when we discuss the impact of cluster injuries, the potential scenario of being down 3 of arguably your top 4 pass catchers is a little bit problematic against the Chiefs defense. To your point, that is a little bit vulnerable in the defensive backfield. And if you can't exploit the weakness, it creates a little bit of problems when you're trying to knock a team from the ranks of the unbeaten. So that may be the heavyweight matchup of the weekend, Payne, but I think Sunday Night Football becomes the most fascinating for me for a variety of reasons between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers, short home favorites in this particular spot. We've seen the total take one-way action, driving it all the way up as high as 48. There are still some 47.5s out there. The Bengals, 4-6, 9th in the AFC, 3rd in the AFC North entering the week. They're 0-5 this year versus teams currently 500 or better, 4-1 versus teams with losing records. The Bengals, they've been an ATS juggernaut away from home, going a perfect 5-0 against the number, including last Thursday night where they came up just short against the Baltimore Ravens. And the Bengals doing something a little bit out of character for them. They're flying west a day early on Friday instead of their normal travel plans on Saturday. And head coach Zach Taylor more or less said we wanted the chemistry as we get out there, guys just eating together, spending time together, and stress to the veterans to have veterans and younger guys getting together and bonding, knowing how important this game is as we head into our bye week. So the Bengals clearly placing added emphasis on this one. Meanwhile, for the Chargers, look, Coach Harbaugh has done a tremendous job in a limited sample size so far this year. The Chargers, 6-0 versus teams currently 500 or worse. They, however, have also struggled against teams with a winning record so far in this campaign. The Bengals offense, Payne, was down a couple of cogs against the Ravens. No T. Higgins, no Orlando Brown. We'll get the first injury report or a better indication, at least on Thursday, for what we can expect of the availability for those two players. I know Wednesday provides a little bit of a litmus test. Jamar Chase, outstanding. Chase Brown emerging as a true RB1. But this is a Chargers defense from a counting stat standpoint that has answered the bell and then some. Allowing just 13.1 points per game would be the fewest by any team in a season since the Baltimore Ravens back in 2006. But again, it's always a question of who you've played to accumulate some of those numbers, even from an underlying metric standpoint. I don't want to say it's as simple and straightforward as the Bengals offense against the Chargers defense, because on the other side, you can make the case that the Bengals defense continues to give up points and does so in bunches in the fourth quarter. Do the Chargers have enough weapons to exploit the Bengals, much like the Baltimore Ravens did last Thursday night?
This is one of the more intriguing games, and I'm glad they've locked it in for Sunday Night Football, because
you didn't want Colts and Jets that was originally scheduled for Sunday Night Football compared to this one?
The bettors may want that, since with the battle going on in the market in that game. Holy moly.
Well, Anthony Richardson can be a polarizing figure in his overall impact to game plan effectiveness and what you'll get from the Jets, who I think just missed another tackle against the Arizona Cardinals.
Jeff Ulbrich holding tackling drills like he's a high school coach this week, apparently.
The Oklahoma drill still has a place in college and pro football.
Yeah, so there's two groups actually on the old Jets, and another group on the Colts. So it's going to be interesting to see how that game ultimately plays out. Getting back into Bengals Chargers, I think what's fascinating about this one is you have two teams that are in that third tier, maybe, with enough talent to where their ceilings can propel them into one of those higher tiers and make some serious noise. I know there's a lot of people that have been hoping the Bengals eventually capture that ceiling. So a lot of buys on them to win the Super Bowl. I believe Billy's one of our guys that has that.
I may or may not have maybe we
Bengals
have a couple playoff exposure as well.
Yeah, just hoping to capture the upside of this team, and how you start to capture that is by health, right? I mean, T. Higgins is vital to this offense. Left tackle Orlando Brown, important to this offense when you look at the drop off there. So both participated and walk through on Wednesday, which Taylor said is for players who intend to play on Sundays. Will not take practice reps on Wednesday. I think today's maybe the key day, but they've made some encouraging progress is the quote. And to this point, what's interesting to me in this matchup is the Chargers have faced the very easiest schedule of offenses in the NFL by a large margin, in fact. So yes, I believe Jesse Minter is a good defensive mind. Yes, I believe the scheme, the game plans are substantially better year over year. We knew there was some talent on this side of the ball. I don't know how good the defense is because they just have not played a soul, and you are going to get a very good Bengals offense here. Now, the game within the game is Jesse Minter. He comes from the Baltimore tree. And so I think it helps the Chargers just a touch with Jesse Minter coming up with a game plan, knowing what the Ravens attempted to do last week, knowing a lot of the components of that defense and seeing how it struggled mightily against this same Bengals offense. This is a guy who has experience against this Bengals offense, having been in that Baltimore system. So I do think it helps to a slight degree, but the schedule or lack of, I think, is maybe the biggest factor here, especially if you get Higgins and Orlando Brown back. I know Higgins is a bit polarizing. Do I believe he's a true NFL number one? Certainly going to get paid like one this offseason. I don't know if that's the case, but specific to what he's doing this season when he's at least on the field for the Bengals, yards per route run, it's the second highest of his career. Second highest contested catch rate, 47%. So he's been dominant when he's been on the field. He's been that guy who opens up things for Jamar Chase. The other thing that is interesting here, and that's why I think Jesse Minter maybe throws a little bit of a curveball here, because I don't think he plays a lot of zone. The Chargers play zone at a top 5 rate in the NFL, and Joe Burrow just absolutely torches zone. And Jamar Chase, I know last week it was an explosive effort. He had been more of the short underneath guy when T. Higgins hasn't been in the game. He just knows how to find open areas in zones, and he typically is fantastic against zones. I just don't know if that's going to work. And you would hope Minter having that ability to adapt and adjust, and having faced the Bengals and having seen the Bengals face the Ravens last week, he makes that adjustment and maybe goes a little bit more man. Difficult to do, though, if T. Higgins is back. The other thing that we've seen on the other side of the ball, and what's but actually causing this move in the market over, we're now seeing this total as high as 48, is the idea that, one, the Chargers offense has had a much higher pass rate over expectation since they're putting the game in Justin Herbert's hands. He's now healthy. If you remember, coming into the season, had the ankle issue, had the foot injury. He's now running much more, and the Bengals defense has been very porous against quarterback
everyone
runs.
And everything.
Yeah, that's true. But this is also the idea that the first time they're actually going to be pushed, right, by an opposing offense that's good. And that's why this total has moved out. It's the Chargers pass rate increasing, and then them actually being pushed by an opposing offense that's going to score some points on their defense. Now, in terms of like this total at 48, I'm like, so you look at our full season, probably shouldn't divulge this, but our full season numbers have this total at like 44.6. if you look at the last 4 weeks, the trending metrics, the trending data, which is certainly vital because these teams change throughout the course of the season, it's 47-1. But at 48, like we're starting to get to a point that's just maybe a little nutty. But you could certainly see the back and forth with two elite quarterbacks and one defense, to your point, in the Bengals, who I thought was starting to make some strides. I don't know what's going on with Lou.
I mean, these numbers are staggering from the Bengals, and I'll share pressure. I'll share some of them from a counting stat standpoint. 21 points the team allowed in Baltimore were the most in the fourth quarter in a decade since the Steelers scored 25 on the Bengals back on December 7th in 2014. The Bengals have allowed at least 13 points in the fourth quarter in 3 consecutive games, setting a franchise record. In the Zach Taylor era, the Bengals have now been outscored in the fourth quarter 38 times in a 92-game sample size, and the defense ranks 31st in fourth quarter points allowed, 30th in third down percentage, 30th in red zone defense, 29th in scoring differential, and 28th in yards allowed. So that whole narrative that we had shared about Lou Anarumo in the second half adjustments, that seems to have officially gone out the window given what we've seen from the Bengals this season.
Yeah, I mean, you had question marks about their secondary. They've brought some guys back. It hasn't improved. And then they haven't been able to stop the run, and we've never really loved their linebackers. And so you could certainly see back and forth game. It's two defenses that just don't get pressure, right? I mean, the Chargers right now, 31st in pressure rate. The Bengals well below average, trending towards bottom 10 in the league in pressure rate. So both quarterbacks should be comfortable. To your point, maybe you question some of the weapons the Chargers have if this is getting in a shootout. But I like what I've seen from Ladd McConkey and his ability to get open. And Justin Herbert's just on an absolute heater right now. I mean, the ball placement is just elite. You saw like the drop touchdown in the second half there.
If you watch him and you don't look at just counting stats and you put quarterback performances up there right now, I will put him as number one in the league given what I've seen over the last couple weeks. Better than Patrick Mahomes, better than Josh Allen, just to your point. The ball placement, the confidence that's there, and you can already see how much more polished he looks commanding this offense in just, 8-9 games with Coach Harbaugh there. It becomes a scary, scary thought for the rest of the league once this team starts to add weapons, because we know that they've already allocated so much in the way of draft resources on that offensive line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a damn good offensive line. You're basically one draft in an offseason away from adding a weapon and adding a few guys on defense. And you're like, ooh, this could be a problem. This could be a problem, right? Everyone's thinking, and maybe it happens this year, right? Maybe Lamar gets that ring and we're sitting here talking Lamar, Mahomes, maybe Josh Allen finally does it, right? But those are the people we're talking about here, is like Lamar and the Ravens, Burrow and the Bengals, Allen and the Bills. And it's like, what's kind of being built here in San Diego. And I know it's the wise guy's favorite team for like the last decade, and they just always
they finally have the coach now, not just the talent.
Yeah, like this to me is potentially the one that's brewing here.
Yeah, the culture that's being built there, credit Coach Harbaugh. And I think, what was interesting in poking around on this game, some of the articles that have been written by those folks closer to the organization about how Justin Herbert wasn't necessarily receptive to the weird, quirky personality of Coach Harbaugh early on in the season, watching his body language. They said these two seem to be thick as thieves and like peas in the pod. And the energy and childlike enthusiasm for Coach Harbaugh for the plays that Justin Herbert makes becomes a dangerous proposition for the rest of the league. And you now know exactly why Coach Harbaugh, who had his choice of pick around the league in terms of where he wanted to go, chose the Los Angeles Chargers as a spot to kind of resurrect his NFL coaching career. So interesting game on Sunday night, a must win for the Bengals, and the Chargers will get a steady dose of AFC North opponents, getting the Bengals on Sunday night and then the Harbaugh a week from Monday night, which should be a fun game to watch in its own right. You can follow. What's up?
What did you call it?
The Harbaugh.
Interesting. Okay. They got a name for it again.
Yep. I mean, I figure they're going to run it back nonstop.
Yeah. Was that did you come up with that? Is that
no?
that
I didn't come up with that. I think that's what they called it before when the 49ers played the Ravens in the Super Bowl.
Okay, there you go. The Harble.
Yeah,
that's a good marketing. We're marketing
it's not. I'm not Pat Riley trying to trademark three-peat, so I never have to work another day in my life. So I don't have that luxury or that level of creativity in my body. You can follow Payne on social media at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Furman. Follow me there. Most importantly, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. Best bet portion of the program, kind sir. I know we kicked around a few options. The floor is yours in terms of what we see as the most investable proposition on the board this week.
Yeah, there's a couple we kicked around. I think one has the potential to get to a key number. So we kind of want to wait on that one a little bit before giving it out. The other one I think is pretty settled. Let's go with 4-5-3 rotation number, the Cleveland Browns +1. This probably isn't overly surprising. We discussed it on Monday a little bit that we thought this game would move, and on the air it moved a little bit. And the reason for that is, like, listen, we like Darren Rizzi, former Miami Dolphins guy, now the interim head coach for the Saints. And I think you praise him for his ability to help increase the energy and effort last week of the New Orleans Saints. And it certainly went a long way. However, it was a little bit of a fraudulent win here. The Saints won that game despite being a net negative 16% in down-to-down success rate. They were net negative in down-to-down EPA per play. I don't think the combination of Derek Carr to MVS deep downfield all game is necessarily the sustainable combination that is going to lead teams to the promised land. And so when I look at the Browns in this matchup, they should be able to run the ball, get Nick Chubb established. They're off the bye week. The one good thing that you liked about Kevin Stefanski's presser this week, he said, anyone who is not on IR seems to be available this week. So this very much has the potential to be the healthiest Browns team in a very, very long time, specifically along the offensive line. So you love to see that. The Saints are 30th in rushing success rate allowed. So you would expect Jameis Winston to have a complementary ground game here. Obviously, Jameis is back in New Orleans, an environment he is familiar with, a team that no longer wanted his services. So I know he's had this one circled. And does he have an
Winston
ability
revenge game, baby? That's what everybody circles on the calendar.
Does he have an ability to throw this game away? Of course, right? The delta is quite large, but I think what's favorable here is you're looking at a Saints defense who is down its top two cornerbacks from what they pegged at the start of the season, right? Traded Marshawn Lattimore away. And then Paulson Adebo obviously had the gruesome leg injury there, I believe, in the Thursday nighter against Denver. So he is out. And so I don't know if there's enough dudes in that secondary to necessarily make Jameis Winston pay for the inevitable mistake or two that potentially brews in this game. You're also looking at a Saints defense that is having a little bit of trouble getting pressure. They are 28th in pass rush win rate, so you should have a comfortable Jameis as well. So the matchup here just is kind of pounding the table. I don't think the market necessarily understands maybe how poor this version of the New Orleans Saints are. You got your energetic boost last week and won fraudulently, and I think maybe comes back to earth this week. So Cleveland Browns +1.
Want to play the flip the data point. If Younghoe Koo actually makes field goals last week and the Falcons beat the New Orleans Saints, Cleveland is a short road favorite here in that 2.5 range.
I think they will ultimately close there. I would think.
Would not shock me in the least if the number continues to migrate across the zero. So the Cleveland Browns, baby, Jameis Winston, take us to the promised land, my friend, and get the job done. Anything else that you would like to share with our loyal listenership before we wish them the best of luck for another action-packed week of pro and college football?
I think that is everything, my man. I think that's everything. Get out of here around an hour.
On that note, we will close up shop here on a Thursday morning and wish people the best of luck with all of their investments this weekend. But most importantly, with a Cleveland Browns ticket in that old portfolio of yours, we'll see you at the window.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Bet the Board. Make sure you follow Todd and Payne on X. Todd is at Todd Furman. That's TODDFUHRMAN. And Payne is at Payne Insider. That's PAYNEINSIDER. Don't forget, our weekly newsletter comes with an additional best bet. Have that delivered to your inbox by clicking the link atop the podcast show notes. And most importantly, subscribe and download Bet the Board. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Wondery, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and all your other major platforms.